Okay, so we're diving deep today into something that's kind of reshaping the whole work landscape.
Yeah.
I feel like, this whole shift towards hybrid work models.
Yeah, it's huge.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we've got this fascinating conversation, like a bunch of different viewpoints, really getting into the nitty-gritty. And I think, our mission today is to cut through all the hype and figure out what's actually going on with this whole hybrid thing. The good, the bad, the confusing, all of it based on what these folks were saying.
Yeah. Right away, what struck me is how different people's priorities are when it comes to their work environment. Some people, they just thrive on that office energy, those random chats by the coffee machine or brainstorming sessions that just sort of happen organically.
Yeah, that whole nostalgia for the office is interesting, right? It's not just about missing the gossip. There's this real sense that some of the best ideas come from those chance encounters, those in-person moments. What is it about being physically present that seems to spark that creativity?
It's a good question. I mean, think about it. When you're in the same room, you've got those nonverbal cues. You can build on each other's ideas instantly. There's this shared energy that can be really powerful. It's tough to get that same vibe on a scheduled Zoom call.
You lose that spontaneity online, for sure. But then there's the other side of the coin, right? The conversation really highlights the appeal of remote work too, like that whole commute thing. People are saving hours, not to mention the reduced stress, and they're using that time for things they actually care about.
Totally. And you hear a lot about fewer distractions when you're working remotely. No more getting pulled into random meetings or dealing with the general office noise. So it's this trade-off, right? Is that focused remote environment worth sacrificing some of that spontaneous in-person connection?
And that brings us to how we actually get work done together,
Yeah.
Collaboration. The conversation seems to suggest that online collaboration can sometimes feel, a little forced. It's harder to recreate those relaxed brainstorming sessions that happen naturally when everyone's in the same room. What do you think that is?
Well, compared to being in person, right? You can have a whiteboard session where ideas literally build on each other visually. You can see everyone's immediate reactions. Online, you're often stuck with more structured tools and meetings, which can kind of stifle that free-flowing exchange. Although, I have to say, some of those online tools are getting better at facilitating visual collaboration. So, there's that.
Yeah, the tech is evolving. But going back to that commute time for a second, those hours add up. It's not a small thing. And the argument is that using that time for your well-being, like exercise or family time, can have a huge positive impact. So is it about finding ways to get some of that spontaneous collaboration back online while still protecting that personal time?
Absolutely. And the conversation also digs into how our environment affects how productive we are individually. For some people, that office buzz, being around others who are working, it actually helps them focus, like a shared energy almost.
Right, being surrounded by people who are in work mode. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But then the counter argument is that remote work can boost productivity for others because you have clearer boundaries between work and life. You're not tempted to do those one last thing tasks in the evening because you're still physically at the office.
Yeah, that's key. Having control over your schedule and your space, it can be so valuable for protecting those boundaries. But, the conversation also brings up a big challenge with remote work, which is those boundaries getting blurred.
Right, like always being on. That example of managers messaging people at all hours, regardless of time zones, that really stood out. It shows how remote work, if there aren't clear expectations, can actually bleed into your personal time. So how do we manage that better, both as individuals and as companies?
I think it comes down to personal responsibility and company culture. Setting clear boundaries for yourself, defining your work hours, turning off notifications outside those hours, that kind of thing. And companies, they need to create a culture that respects those boundaries. No expectation of constant availability. Clear communication is so important.
And then there are the, shall we say, unique distractions of working from home. The story about the toddler, that was relatable. Different kind of interruption than the chatty coworker, but still distraction.
True, but it does remind us that offices have distractions too. right? The conversation mentions those colleagues who just love to chat, maybe a little too much. So wherever you're working, managing distractions is part of the game.
Absolutely. Now, something else that comes up is mentorship and learning, especially for people who are new to a team or a field. There's a worry that you lose some of that informal knowledge transfer that happens naturally in person. Observing how someone works, asking quick questions.
It's a valid concern. It's much harder to just casually absorb that kind of knowledge remotely. You need a more structured approach to mentorship, maybe regular one-on-one check-ins, or even like virtual shadowing.
Interesting. And then there's the whole issue of career advancement and how working remotely might be perceived. That fear of being out of sight, out of mind, it's real for a lot of people. There's this idea that those who are physically present in the office might get preferential treatment when it comes to promotions.
Right, like FaceTime equals dedication. But the conversation actually offers a different perspective on this. Someone talked about getting a raise while working fully remotely, which suggests that a company that truly values results, not just presence, will recognize your contributions no matter where you are. So maybe that out-of-sight fear says more about the company's culture than about remote work itself.
Yeah, it's about finding a company that aligns with your values. The point about some bosses equating late hours with dedication, that's a big one. It really resonated with me. Like, seek out companies that trust their employees and value output, not just where the work happens.
Exactly. And if we tie this to the bigger picture of career growth, the conversation also touches on networking. It's hard to replicate those chance encounters you have in person, right? Those moments that can lead to new opportunities.
Totally. You bump into someone at a conference, you chat, and suddenly a door opens. That organic networking is trickier online. Although the conversation does point out that platforms like LinkedIn and virtual conferences are creating new ways to connect. You could argue they even have a wider reach.
It's like networking is evolving. Maybe those spontaneous in-person moments happen less, but online you can be more intentional and you can connect with a broader range of people.
That's a good point. Now, shifting gears a bit, the conversation gets into something really fundamental, which is social connection and belonging. That potential for remote work to feel isolating, it's a real concern. People miss those genuine connections, the friendships that go beyond just work stuff.
It speaks to the social fabric of a workplace, right? Those little interactions, hallway chats, lunches, they all contribute to a sense of camaraderie. And it can even spark creativity. It's about feeling part of something bigger.
Absolutely. I love that idea that those random hallway conversations can lead to unexpected inspiration, that free flow of ideas. And it is hard to recreate online, even with all the tools we have. Though I did find that suggestion of using VR meetings to try and simulate those casual encounters, I thought that was kind of interesting.
It makes you wonder how well technology can ever really capture the nuances of in-person interaction. But then the conversation moves on to how physical office spaces themselves might change.
And the idea of offices becoming more like optional hubs, the places for collaboration while still offering flexibility for remote work, that feels like where things are headed.
Right. It's about finding a balance, recognizing that different tasks and different people thrive in different environments.
Now, we can't forget about the financial side of all this. The conversation touches on the money stuff. And for employees, the savings on commuting and lunches, that can be huge. Plus, the environmental benefits of fewer cars on the road.
Those are real advantages. But as the conversation points out, you might end up with a bigger electricity bill working from home.
True. Which brings up a really important question. Should companies be sharing some of the money they're saving with their remote employees? Like offering a remote stipend to help cover those extra costs.
Yeah, I like that idea. On the other hand, the conversation also mentions some companies considering pay cuts for remote workers, using savings as the excuse, which, come on, that just feels wrong. It raises some serious questions about fairness, like your pay should be based on the value of your work, not where you do it.
No question. So, big picture time.
Yeah.
Are we all going fully remote, or will the office always have a place? What do you think?
Well, the general consensus in this conversation seems to be that offices aren't going away completely. We're social creatures, we need that connection. But maybe the purpose of the office changes.
And the real takeaway for me is that flexibility isn't just a perk anymore, it's becoming an expectation, giving employees the choice of where and how they work best, while still making sure everyone's connected and collaborating. That seems like the future.
And that requires a real shift in mindset, both for employees and employers. Companies need to trust their people to be productive no matter where they are, and they need to be flexible in how they support hybrid work.
Oh, and we can't forget the unsung hero of remote work. Good Wi-Fi. Without that, none of this really works.
It all comes down to a solid internet connection.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear that hybrid work is a complex, ever-changing thing. We talked about the love for the office, the perks of remote, the challenges of collaboration, finding that work-life balance, and the financial side of it all. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It's about finding what works best for each person and each company.
And the conversation we looked at today, it offers some really valuable insights as we navigate this new world of work.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's something to ponder as you go about your day. Thinking about everything we discussed, all the pros and cons, what would your ideal mix of remote and in-office work actually look like? What are your non-negotiables when it comes to creating that balance for yourself? As the future of work unfolds, that's a question worth asking. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.